a very great scholar of Dvaita Vedanta, Srinivas Varkhedi. He is the vice chancellor of a university there right now, I think. So I met him a long time ago in our Vivekananda University at Belur Math. Wonderful scholar of Madhva Vedanta. In fact, he gave me a very nice insight. He said, Swami, if you ask the same Upanishads 3 questions, you will get 3 darshanas, 3 philosophies. If you ask the Upanishads what is true and what is false, the answer you will get is the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. If you ask the question, what is Purna and what is Amsha, what is full and what is part, what is partial and what is complete, then you will get the philosophy from the same Upanishads. You will get the philosophy of Vishishtadvaita Vedanta. And if you ask what is independent and what is dependent, Swatantra and Paratantra, you will get the philosophy of Madhva Vedanta, Dvaita Vedanta. So how the same set of texts can generate multiple philosophies. So I'd never heard this before. It's a very nice way of looking at it. Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavividitam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvigrinanti Bhurida Jana. We are studying the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and we are on chapter 3. We're going to start chapter 3. Page 99. Visit to Vidyasagar. So I'm going to read. I'll read at length for some time because the long descriptions are there before the actual teachings start. Visit to Vidyasagar. 5th August 1882. Pandit Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was born in the village of Bir Singh, not far from Kamarpukur, Sri Ramakrishna's birthplace. He was known as a great scholar, educator, writer, and philanthropist. One of the creators of modern Bengali, he was also well versed in Sanskrit grammar and poetry. In fact, now in Bengal, when they teach Sanskrit grammar, they use a textbook which is written by Vidyasagar, even now. His generosity made his name a household word with his countrymen, most of his income being given in charity to widows, orphans, indigent students, and other needy people. Nor was his compassion limited to human beings. He stopped drinking milk for years so that the calves should not be deprived of it. And he would not drive in a carriage for fear of causing discomfort to the horses. He was a man of indomitable spirit, which he showed when he gave up the lucrative position of principal of the Sanskrit College of Calcutta because of a disagreement with the authorities. His affection for his mother was especially deep. One day, in the absence of a ferry boat, he swam a raging river at the risk of his life to fulfill her wish that he should be present at his brother's wedding. His whole life was one of utter simplicity. The title Vidyasagar, meaning ocean of learning, was given him in recognition of his vast erudition. Sri Ramakrishna had long wanted to visit Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. Learning from M that he was a teacher at Vidyasagar's school, the master asked, "Can you take me to Vidyasagar? I would like very much to see him." M told Ishwar Chandra of Sri Ramakrishna's wish, and the Pandit gladly agreed that M should bring the master some Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock. He only asked M what kind of Paramahamsa the master was, saying, "Does he wear an ochre cloth?" M answered, "No, sir. He is an unusual person. He wears a red-bordered cloth and polished slippers. He lives in a room in Rani Rashmani's temple garden. In his room, there is a couch with a mattress and a mosquito net. He has no outer indication of holiness, but he doesn't know anything except God, Day and night he thinks of God alone. On the afternoon of 5th August, the master left Dakshineshwar in a hackney carriage, accompanied by Bhavanath, M. and Hajra. Vidyasagar lived in Badur Bagan in central Calcutta, about 6 miles from Dakshineshwar. On the way, Sri Ramakrishna talked with his companions, but as the carriage neared Vidyasagar's house, his mood suddenly changed. He was overpowered with divine ecstasy. Not noticing this, M pointed out the garden house where Raja Ram Mohan Roy had lived. The master was annoyed and said, I don't care about such things now. He was going into an ecstatic state. The carriage stopped in front of Vidyasagar's house. The master alighted, supported by M, who then led the way. In the courtyard were many flowering plants. As the master walked to the house, he said to M, like a child, pointing to his shirt button, my shirt is unbuttoned. Will that offend Vidyasagar? Oh no, said M. Don't be anxious about it. Nothing about you will be offensive. You don't have to button your shirt. He accepted the assurance simply, like a child. Vidyasagar was about 62 years old, 16 or 17 years older than the master. He lived in a two-story house built in the English fashion, with lawns on all sides and surrounded by a high wall. After climbing the stairs to the second floor, Sri Ramakrishna and his devotees entered a room at the far end of which Vidyasagar was seated, facing them, with a table in front of him. To the right of the table was a bench. Some friends of their host occupied chairs on the other two sides. Vidyasagar rose to receive the master. Sri Ramakrishna stood in front of the bench with one hand resting on the table. He gazed at Vidyasagar as if they had known each other before and smiled in an ecstatic mood. In that mood, he remained standing a few minutes. Now and then, to bring his mind back to normal consciousness, he said, I shall have a drink of water. In the meantime, the young members of the household and a few friends and relatives of Vidyasagar had gathered around. Sri Ramakrishna, still in an ecstatic mood, sat on the bench. A young man, 17 or 18 years old, who had come to Vidyasagar to seek financial help for his education, was seated there. The master sat down at a little distance from the boy, saying in an abstracted mood, Mother, this boy is very much attached to the world. He belongs to thy realm of ignorance. Vidyasagar told someone to bring water and asked M whether the master would like some sweetmeats also. Since M did not object, Vidyasagar himself went eagerly to the inner apartments and bought the sweets. They were placed before the master. Bhavanath and Hajra also received their share. When they were offered to M, Vidyasagar said, Oh, he's like one of the family. We needn't worry about him. Because he was a teacher in Vidyasagar school, that's why. Referring to a young devotee, the master said to Vidyasagar, He is a nice young man and is sound at the core. He is like the river Falgu. The surface is covered with sand, but if you dig a little, you will find water flowing underneath. After taking some of the sweets, the master, with a smile, began to speak to Vidyasagar. Meanwhile, the room had become filled with people. Some were standing and others were seated. Master. Today at last I have come to the ocean. Up till now, I have only seen canals, marshes, or a river at the most. But today I am face to face with the Sagar, the ocean, which is a play on words, a reference to his title, Vidyasagar, the ocean of knowledge. Vidyasagar, smiling. Then please take home some salt water. Laughter. Master. Oh no, why salt water? You aren't the ocean of ignorance. You are the ocean of Vidya, knowledge. You are the ocean of condensed milk. All laugh. Vidyasagar, well, you may put it that way. So there's a very interesting play on words. And you see, at every point, Sri Ramakrishna gets the better of Vidyasagar, which is which is quite interesting considering that Sri Ramakrishna was almost practically unlettered while Vidyasagar was this great Pandit. But whenever there was a kind of witty exchange, Sri Ramakrishna seemed to prevail. The Pandit became silent. Sri Ramakrishna said, "Your activities are inspired by sattva. Though they are rajasic, they are inspired by sattva. Compassion springs from sattva. Though work for the good of others belongs to rajas, yet this rajas has sattva for its basis and is not harmful. Shuka and other sages cherished compassion in their minds to give people religious instruction to teach them about God. You are distributing food and learning. That is good too. If these activities are done in a selfless spirit, they lead to God. But most people work for fame or to acquire merit. Their activities are not selfless. Besides, you are already a siddha. Um, Footnote, literally, perfect or boiled. The word is applied both to the perfected soul and to boiled things. So you are siddha. Vidyasagar, how is that, sir? Master, laughing. When potatoes and other vegetables are well cooked, they become soft and tender. And you possess such a tender nature. You are so compassionate. Laughter. Vidyasagar, laughing. But when the paste of kalai pulse is boiled, it becomes all the harder. So he's very self-deprecating. That means even if you boil me, I don't become perfect. I just become worse. Master, but you don't belong to that class. Mere pandits are like diseased fruit that become hard and will not ripen at all. Such fruit has neither the freshness of green fruit nor the flavor of ripe. Vultures soar very high in the sky, but their eyes are fixed on rotten carrion on the ground. The book learned are reputed to be wise, but they are attached to lust and gold. Like the vultures, they are in search of carrion. They are attached to the world of ignorance. Compassion, love of God, and renunciation are the glories of true knowledge. Vidyasagar listened to these words in silence. The others too gazed at the master and were attentive to every word he said. Vidyasagar was very reticent about giving religious instruction to others. He had studied Hindu philosophy. Once, when M asked him his opinion of it, Vidyasagar had said, "I think the philosophers have failed to explain what was in their minds." But in his daily life, he followed all the rituals of Hindu religion and wore the sacred thread of a Brahmin. About God, he had once declared, "It is indeed impossible to know him. What then should be our duty? It seems to me that we should live in such a way that if others followed our example, this very earth would be heaven. Everyone should try to do good to the world." All right. Before I go on, a few remarks about at the top of the page. Sri Ramakrishna makes some observations about work, karma. He says that though your activities, that is helping others, giving education, giving monetary aid, um, all the compassionate work that Vidyasagar did, he said the work itself is rajasic, but the motivation is sattvic. And then he says that Shuka and other sages cherished compassion in their minds to give people religious instruction, to teach them about God. You are distributing food and learning. That is good too. And then he says, if these activities are done in a selfless spirit, they lead to God. But most people work for fame or to acquire merit. Their activities are not selfless. And then, of course, he says that you are a siddha. So doing good, karma, social action, social service. Here, Sri Ramakrishna has made some very important observations about social service and spiritual life. He says that all of this action in spiritual life is done out of compassion from an enlightened perspective, from the perspective of the enlightened person. Out of compassion, they give spiritual instruction. Why only spiritual instruction? Because this is the highest good. If you give food to a person, he'll be hungry again. If you give medicine to a person, one day again, later, someday he'll be sick and die again. But spiritual knowledge is that which saves and gives immortality. It's the ultimate gift one can give. And one has to be oneself spiritually advanced to give that. Another way of giving spiritual knowledge is as a practice. So when you are teaching Vedanta, it's not that you're giving it out of compassion, it's a practice for yourself also. It's a form of Vedantic nididhyasana, to dwell on that teaching. And so that's a service. Another service is, as he said, you're distributing food and learning. So physical help in the form of food. It could be medicine also, it could be shelter. And Vidyasagar actually did that. And then education. So, and he says that is good too. If they are done in a selfless spirit, they lead to God. But if one does them, he gives two other options. Some do it for fame, and some do it to acquire merit, that is good karma, punya. So these are the, you can see the underlying structure is very interesting. Doing it for fame, doing good things for fame, is a worldly goal. That means it gives me happiness and pleasure and in this life itself. So that falls under the category of kama and artha. Doing it for acquiring merit, that is punya, that falls under the category of dharma. And they are doing it for punya. So what is the purpose? The purpose is attainment of swarga. After death, I will go to higher worlds. Then the third thing is doing it selflessly, which means doing it as a spiritual practice for purification of mind. He says it leads to God. Now see how interestingly he has brought out the different levels of human beings and our pursuits in life. There are those, and all of these are good people. So there are those who do good work, but for worldly gains. So schools and colleges and hospitals and helping people. But what is the purpose? The purpose is I should be well known as a philanthropist. I have given so many endowments and so much money, and I'm one of the leading philanthropists of the world, and with good intentions. Or it could be one goes into politics and wants to win elections and things like that. So that's one goal. And this is a pretty enlightened view. I mean, like many of the great philanthropists in this country, imagine a lot of great work has been done in the United States because of people who are very wealthy, but they also donated a lot of money and set up endowments and so many institutions, universities and schools, hospitals, the New York Public Library here, for example, the museums. So a great deal of what is, you see, wonderful in this country, institutions, not made by the government. They're made by enlightened thinking, forward-thinking people who had the means to do good and also the intention of doing good. So that's one kind of philanthropy, and he's not criticizing it here. There's another kind, which is dharma, which is that after death, I acquire good karma. The idea is with that you go to heaven, swarga. So to acquire merit. That's another category of person. And there's a third category of person who wants moksha, so spiritual liberation. So they do these good works. What are the good works? He says you're giving food and you're giving learning. So physical help, educational help, and also spiritual help. You teach Vedanta, or you publish books or whatever, all sorts of spiritual teaching. All of that is done as one's own spiritual practice, because he says here it leads to God if it is done in a selfless spirit. It becomes karma yoga. And then there is a fourth category of persons. He says Shukra and others. So Shukra and other sages, they were already enlightened, and they also did action out of compassion. But their thing was, it was an expression of their innate compassion. Because they were enlightened, they felt the sufferings of others and they felt the divine connection with others. So they did it out of compassion. So you can see these three categories. Same thing, doing good work, doing it for worldly goals, doing it for other worldly goals, for God, for heaven and all, and then doing it for God realization, and doing it after becoming enlightened as an expression of their enlightenment, manifestation of the divinity within, as Swami Vivekananda would say. So 4 stages already he has mentioned here. And doing good, he has shown different levels. You can help physically, you can help educationally, culturally, and you can help in a spiritual sense. So those 3 things also he has mentioned. See how much is packed in this. Now all of this, it becomes the basis for the karma yoga, which many spiritual seekers do in our Ramakrishna order. So why are monks and devotees engaged in hospitals and schools? It's taken for granted now that yes, good people, religious people will do good to others. But why exactly? What's the connection between God realization and say running a school or a hospital? It is here that if it is done in a selfless spirit, they lead to God. Same activities done, so they do a lot of good to other people in the world, and they lead to God. That is the practice of karma yoga. Elsewhere, of course, he has given the philosophy behind it, Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva. So what is this selfless spirit in which you are doing good? What is this selfless spirit? It is that you are worshipping God, knowing all these beings whom you are so-called, helping. They are none other than God. Then you give, whether it is food or medicine or education, or even just counseling and helping people, or ultimately even spiritual knowledge, whether you're teaching the shastras, giving spiritual instruction. All of that is done in the spirit of Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva, where monks and devotees alike. So that's one point I wanted to make. And then he makes that little pun on the word Siddha. It's the Bengali Siddho. In some Indian languages, Siddha, it's but a close word is the word for being boiled, Siddha. So that is being boiled and become soft. And you have become soft and compassionate. Your compassion is coming from a place of sympathy for others because you are soft. And then he makes the distinction between actually intellectual achievement and learning and true spirituality, true compassion and true spirituality. So he gives some examples. Fruit which becomes hard and will not ripen at all. So they are not as fresh as the green fruit, and they do not have the flavor of ripe fruit. Similarly, people who go through life may acquire a lot of learning, may have read philosophy, got a PhD and become teachers of philosophy, and yet they have not absorbed it. So that flavor is not there in their advanced and mature age. And they lack the openness and the freshness of the young person who's eager to learn. So it's a very difficult position to be in, a bad position to be in. Second example he gives is vultures, which he has mentioned a number of times. So the vultures fly very high, but what are they doing? They have got very keen vision, and they're looking around for dead bodies. So similarly, there are these maybe very scholarly persons, very subtle in their understanding, and very well read in philosophy and in scriptures. But the whole point is, how can I advance a little more in the world? Money or fame, or very, very much attached to these things. I mentioned earlier, there's one great Pandit I met who was in his 90s at that time. So he had traditional degrees in 7 branches of traditional learning, including Vedanta and Sankhya and Nyaya, and of course grammar and other things. And one of the branches was Jyotisha, astrology. Now, in his old age, in his final years, he decisively moved into astrology. So somebody asked him, why, after learning Vedanta and Sankhya and Nyaya and all these philosophies, why are you emphasizing astrology? And it was hard of hearing. He said, what? Why astrology after learning all these things? He said, oh, there's no money in those things. Astrology, a lot of money is there. So Sri Ramakrishna did not like that kind of learning. So learning just for the sake of learning, it's just like a skill. One may be a good singer or a dancer or a painter without being a particularly good person. Somebody said that, it's our culture here, especially in advanced countries, here in the West, and especially in a place like New York, creativity is admired and worshipped. So the new gods are the artists and the writers. So somebody mentioned that creative geniuses, It's remarkable to read their work or admire their work and read about their lives, but if you get to know them, they're often not good people at all. So it does not mean that a person who has some extraordinary talent, not that the person who has extraordinary talent will be a bad person, not at all, that doesn't follow at all. But what it means is, don't mistake deep learning in scriptures, even in philosophy, even in Vedanta, don't mistake it for high spirituality. A person may be very simple, not particularly learned in Sanskrit, or may not have read all the books, but still have very deep insight into spirituality and be able to manifest it in his or her life. That is true spirituality. Vivekananda said, 1 ounce of practice is worth 20 tons of tall talk. So this is the distinction he makes. Then how do you know what is true knowledge? If it's not giving good lectures, writing books, publishing papers, if that is not a guarantee, such a person may have true knowledge. Who knows? Because I have seen and I've also heard many of the traditional Pandits, they were really genuinely spiritual. Many of them had led very austere, simple lives, and they practiced what they studied and taught, including some of the great Pandits who came to meet Sri Ramakrishna. Vidyasagar, of course, is one, but Shivnath Shastri was there, and others were there, very great Pandits who came. Narayan Shastri was there and others. So what are the hallmarks? How do you know them? If just by learning one cannot find out who is a real Pandit. Pandit in the sense of knowing the scriptures, or being spiritual, in the sense of being spiritual. By the way, the actual meaning of the word Pandit, Shankaracharya has given in his commentary, Panda. Panda means Atma Vishaya Pragya. Atma Vishaya Pragya means enlightenment regarding the self, one who knows Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Such a person is Pandit, who has become enlightened. That person is the true Pandit. So Sri Ramakrishna gives here the signs. Compassion, love of God, and renunciation are the glories of true knowledge. So this you must look for. If after tremendous amount of study, my goal becomes to earn more money through astrology, then there's something, there's nothing wrong in that, but it's not particularly spiritual. Whereas, if you look at Vidyasagar's life, compassion is overflowing with compassion, and renunciation, his life was very simple. He used most of the money that he got, he used it for others. Love of God, that is, I think, what Sri Ramakrishna came to awaken in him. It was sort of suppressed in him. He was learned, maybe personally devout, but he refused to talk about spirituality or teach others. So he was not a skeptic, but he sometimes would seem to be from outside, like agnostic kind of person. So he says, compassion, love of God, and renunciation are the glories of true knowledge. So he practiced in his life. He was not only very austere, he followed all the rules of a traditional Brahmin, for example. He was quite all the rituals and the rules he followed. He lived a very simple and pure life. But look at what he says. It is impossible to know God. So our duty is to lead good lives, to do good to others. And then he says, we should live in such a way that if others followed our example, this earth would be heaven. So immediately, those who have studied ethics, you recognize the Kantian imperative. How should one live in this world? How should one act in this world? Act in a way which you would have others act also. You see, even a person who is, for example, a thief, if you ask that person, would you want everybody else to be a thief? You say, no. I would want others to be honest. So I should follow those virtues which I want others also, which I would prescribe for others. Everybody should follow those virtues. Therefore, as he says, the world would become, this very earth would be heaven. Then everyone should try to do good to the world. So that's the furthest he would go. But God realization is the goal. It is possible to realize God. One should actually make an effort to realize God. He is not willing to come out and say that openly. So this is the difference. This is the difference between what Sri Ramakrishna is teaching and Vidyasagar's position. Lisa says that this sounds like the golden rule. Exactly. There is a golden rule in every religion. In Christianity, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Not only that, if you go to the United Nations at the General Assembly here in New York, when you enter in the building, there's this big, like a sculpture, the big block where the golden rule is written there. And it says that this is the core of ethics in different wisdom traditions of the world. Just about every wisdom tradition in the world has some variety of the golden rule. That was stated by Kant in that way. You're right, it's the golden rule that you treat others as you want others to treat you. Gita, it says, Atma upamyena sarvatra samam pashyati Arjuna sukham va yadi va dukkham. You see the sorrows and happinesses of others as you see your own sorrows and happinesses. So you identify with others. So it's like the golden rule. Yes, this idea is there in the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, all the major wisdom traditions of the world have this idea. In Buddhism, you come across this argument, dukkham heyam dukkhatvat. That means sorrow should be overcome wherever it is, because it is sorrow. There's an interesting insight. We naturally, instinctively try to fight pain and sorrow in our case. We don't want any of it. So we immediately, because it's sorrow, it's unhappiness. Therefore, of course, we don't want it. And we try to overcome it, either physically or materially, psychologically, and spiritually. So we try to overcome sorrow. But the Buddhists point out that sorrow is exactly the same in other people also. If my sorrow, in my case, the kind of pain and suffering it produces, in everybody's case, this sorrow produces pain and suffering. So if pain and suffering is to be overcome, then we should feel the same motivation for overcoming the suffering in the case of others also. Why? Because it is suffering. It's an interesting insight. How can we soften our hearts? Lola is asking how we can soften our hearts. One thing is to pay attention to others. An interesting study recently, multiple studies actually have been done in positive psychology to show the link between attention and compassion. What it means is this. There have been, like for example, photographs I've seen, the New York subway, very busy. People are rushing to their jobs, getting off trains and going out of the subway station. Somebody is fainted maybe, or maybe a homeless person on the sidewalk. Nobody noticed this to the extent of stepping over that person. And yet, you might think how cruel, how uncaring. Yet, when one person notices and tries to help, you will find a few others immediately gather around. What happened? It's because they were not paying attention. And that feeling of suffering also did, that feeling of compassion, sympathy, empathy, that did not come up. To kickstart our mirror neurons, our empathy circuits, one needs to pay attention. So there is a very interesting experiment performed at one of the divinity schools, not at Harvard, somewhere else, maybe Yale or somewhere, where the students were to test compassion. So a group of students were taught this parable of the Good Samaritan. You know, the one who helped. In the Bible, you find the parable of the Good Samaritan, the one who helped. So the person who helps is really your neighbor, and not actual neighbor who does not pay attention. So the Good Samaritan who helped. And that parable was taught. The idea is that how much does actual teaching change our behavior? What changes our behavior? What produces compassion? Reading a book or studying something, does that produce compassion? That was the study. So a group of students were taught the parable of the Good Samaritan, and they said that you have to give a talk on this parable of the Good Samaritan, prepare a talk, And the talk will be in a lecture hall across the quad, across the lawn. You walk across, there'll be an audience. You have to go and give the talk. Prepare, you've got a few minutes. So everybody's busy preparing what to say and so on. And another group of students were taught some other parable, which has no connection with compassion. They were also told to prepare a talk. And then they walked across the quad one by one. In the middle of that lawn, and on a bench, one person was sitting, pretending to have a stomach ache or something. As the student walked past, he would bend over and groan with as if with pretended pain and double over. And they were watching from a distance to see what the student does. In many cases, the student did not notice, just walked past. In some cases, they noticed and stopped and asked, can I help you? Are you okay? So that was and when they reached the other building ready to give the talk, they were told there's no talk, that's it, the experiment is over, now you go home. And then they collated the data. And the interesting result was, it made no difference what parable had been taught. Whether it had been taught a parable about compassion or something else had been taught, it does not make any difference. It does not make a difference what subject you are thinking about to prepare a talk. You may be thinking about to prepare a talk, to give a talk on compassion, but that person who is groaning with pain, that does not create any compassion in the student's mind. Because why? Because the attention is focused on, these are my points and I will go and give this talk, and there is the audience waiting there, hardly even notices that this person is sitting on the bench. Only those who noticed, for some reason they noticed, they felt compassion. Those who did not notice, no matter how much of compassionate theory they were thinking about, they did not feel compassion, they did not stop. So the one outcome of the study is that compassion depends on attention. So if we slow down, if you meditate, if you are quiet, and you notice other people around you, that generates compassion, that softens the heart. Practice of devotion softens the heart. So when you practice devotion for God, love of God, that softens the heart. Love of God softens the heart, and then you are softer, kinder, quieter, gentler with everybody else. You can't be very harsh to people around you and yet have genuinely deep love and affection for devotion for God. It's slightly contradictory there. And from a Vedantic perspective, the feeling of oneness softens the heart. See, our hearts are already very soft for ourselves. Now, if my sense of self expands to include everybody else, you will feel, and that softness will extend to everybody. Also, I think maturity. I'm not saying simply aging will make a person softer, but maturity, which often comes with aging, maturity also makes a person softer. Question is from Sangeeta, can you please talk about how to prevent the practice of doing karma yoga from unwittingly degrading into sakama karma? Yes. So karma yoga is, as Sri Ramakrishna says here, this work is, if it's done in a selfless spirit, they lead to God. Selfless spirit means karma yoga. Then it leads to God. Well, first of all, one must make up one's mind that my goal of my life is God realization. You think of it as enlightenment, self-realization, God realization, whatever you call it. The goal is moksha, nirvana, enlightenment, God, whatever it is, that is the goal of my life. Now, all my activities, my spiritual practices and my activities, they have to be converted into something that will help me to reach my goal. I am a sadhaka or a sadhika from now on. What's the difference between a sadhaka, spiritual practitioner, and others? It's this. A sadhaka, spiritual practitioner, is somebody who consistently does activities which are helpful for God realization, and carefully and consistently avoids those activities which are harmful for God realization. See, everybody once in a while may listen to a bhajan, may go to a temple or join a meditation retreat, read a couple of interesting books on spirituality. Everybody can do that. That does not make a person a sadhaka. A sadhaka is one who has made up his or her mind, sadhaka or sadhika, that I want to realize God in this life. and I will try my best. So more and more, it's not an on and off thing, it's like a spectrum, but more and more my life becomes about spirituality. And it's not also very unique. There are many such people. So we have all come across people like that, at least a few. So you make up your mind, God realization is my goal, and that is my project in life. Whether I tell others or not, internally, that's my highest goal, my purpose in life. Now what will I do in my life? How do I spend my days? How do I behave with people? What kind of words do I use? What kind of thoughts do I entertain in my mind? These are all determined by my goal, God realization. What will help me? Will it take me towards goal? Then I will do it. And consistently, not once in a while. And these other thoughts, these other words, language, this other action, behavior, this is against spirituality. It takes me away from God. Greed, anger, passion, jealousy, hurting others, all of this takes me away from God realization. So I will try to give it up. Consistently, if one does it, then one is a spiritual seeker. Then our actions will become karma yoga. Even then, there is the danger, as the question says, of slipping back. Karma yoga becomes sakama karma again. Why? Because some of the specific dangers of karma yoga is not a private spiritual practice. Karma yoga is, it's always connected with, generally connected with people, family, community, other people in the world, and you are selflessly trying to do good. The result, generally and very quickly, the result is praise. And the result is you can see a lot of good being done. People will praise you for being selfless and dedicated and sincere, and very soon it becomes work done for hearing those words of praise. It could be I've seen monks who run schools and hospitals. It's such a good work. After all, it's very difficult to argue against something that is good. So it consumes the whole day. And so they're busy at it. And everybody is saying this is good. This person is working from morning till evening. You're busy in the office, in the classroom, or in the medical ward. So busyness itself becomes a kind of addiction. And because it's all in a good cause, one does not suspect what is going on. So slowly, nishkama karma, that is selfless work, degenerates into sakama karma. It is good for the world, and it gives you a lot of good karma, but it's not spiritual. It will not help in spiritual life. So what is the antidote? The antidote is the harmony of the yogas. There must be a time for withdrawal from karma. There is a time and a place for doing good work, and there's a time and place for withdrawing from that. So in our monastery, for example, we insist morning and evening there should be meditation. One should go to the arati. There should be time for study, and these are insisted upon. As I've seen senior monks scolding younger novices, sitting in the office after evening arati, say, no need, doing good work, but no need to do all that. Go to the temple and meditate. One young man in our main monastery, he said, getting up at 3:40 a.m. is very difficult for me. I feel sleepy all day long, and it impacts my other work, my duties. And a senior monk who was listening patiently to all this, he said, he was uncompromising. He said, look, I'm asking you only one thing. You get up at 3:40 in the morning, and at Brahma Muhurta go to the temple and meditate. After that, if your performance is poor, you are throughout the day, you are sleepy, you're not unable to do much work, I'm fine with it. I don't mind. So he's not compromising there. Of course, nothing will happen. The person will do good work throughout the day also. It's others are doing, so it's just a kind of trick of the mind, which says that I have so much work to do in the office, in the hospital, in the school, so I need 1 or 2 hours of extra sleep, so I will not get up in the morning. Trick of the mind. That's why the harmony of the 4 yogas, Swami Vivekananda insisted upon it, that prevents karma yoga from becoming sakama karma. You will do your karma yoga, but you will also withdraw from it. You will meditate, you will spend time in devotion and prayer, and you'll study. This balances the dangers of becoming extroverted in Karma Yoga. Punita ji says ultimate selflessness is to always inhere in the self. That is true. In the capital S self is the ultimate selflessness. I remember Professor Christopher Chappell in Loyola Marymount College in Los Angeles. So he's a professor of Indian philosophy. So you're saying that, see, Advaita Vedanta, wouldn't it lead to egotism? I am Brahman. Wouldn't it lead to egotism? So he's coming from a Christian perspective. So where you lower yourself, humble yourself before God, it is blasphemy to say, I am God. That's the ultimate ego trip, power trip. I am God. It sounds megalomaniacal. No. The realization of one's identity with the absolute is actually selflessness. When you say, I am Brahman, it has nothing to do with this little person. You have to transcend the Sarvapriyananda. I have to transcend the Sarvapriyananda identity, this little being with its little likes and dislikes. I have to be equidistant from Sarvapriyananda and every other personality. Then only I can say that I am Brahman. I am not this body, not this mind. I am the witness consciousness of this body and mind without the slightest trace of the individual personality. Only that witness consciousness, it is true to say of that is Brahman. When I can say I am the witness consciousness, then I can say I am Brahman. Brahmatvam, that it is that infinite reality, it is not true of the individual limited personality. How can the limited be the unlimited? How can the finite be the infinite? Infinite has nothing to do with the small self. Rita says from Athens, Georgia, that in Tirukural, it says that karma yogena malanivritti, upasana yogena vikshepanivritti, jnana yogena avidyanivritti. Do you recognize this structure of sadhana? I have said it many times. This is a classic Advaitic sadhana. By karma yoga, you purify the mind. By upasana or meditation, you concentrate the mind. And by jnana yoga, you get enlightenment. What do you remove by karma yoga? Impurities of the mind. That is called malanivritti. What do you remove by meditation? Vikshepa. Vikshepa means distraction. You remove distractions by meditation. Vikshepa nivritti. What do you remove by jnana yoga? That is avidya nivritti. The cessation or removal of ignorance. Notice all the spiritual practices. And in these these practices, karma yoga, upasana, and jnana yoga, all spiritual practices are included in this. Notice that they are all negative in character. They are removing obstacles to an already existing luminous reality. What obstacles? Impurity of mind. Sri Ramakrishna says that the needle is automatically attracted to the magnet. You don't have to do anything. But if the needle is covered with mud, one must cleanse the mud. Otherwise, that attraction will not be evident, will not work. So cleansing the mud, Karma Yoga does that. It is called malanivritti, removal of impurities. All the varieties of impurities which are evident in our life. Then the mind must become steady like the flame of a lamp in a windless place. That steadiness of mind, it comes through regular meditation. Keep the mind steadily. See, the training of attention. We talked about attention. Attention is most important. So training of attention is done by upasana yoga. That's an important practice. So regular meditation. And then with the purified and meditative mind, when you come to Vedantic teachings, as she has written here, jnana yogena avidya nivritti. So it seems, she says that it seems like karma yoga also plays a role in purifying the psyche, which role is usually ascribed to Raja Yoga. No, it's actually ascribed to Karma Yoga. Purifying the psyche is done by Karma Yoga. Purifying the mind, overcoming the negativities in the mind and the attractions to worldliness in the mind. Raja Yoga is, if you look at it from Swami Vivekananda's perspective, it is equivalent to Upasana Yoga, meditation. So Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, Swami Vivekananda called it Raja Yoga. Now, just a little bit of an addition here, that can one purify the mind and concentrate the mind just by Vedantic study? Technically, yes. Practically, difficult. Technically, yes. Why I'm saying? So there are many monks who take to sannyasa, traditional Vedantic sannyasa. So one of the things which you do when you become a monk is you give up the traditional rituals which are practiced up to householder life. You give up even the Gayatri Mantra Japa, the Upasanas, the meditative practices done up to householder life. If you give those up, and it is almost sure that most of those who become monks, it's not that their minds are already completely purified. Then how will they purify their minds? You see the question? The problem is, suddenly one becomes a monk. When it gets a lot of vairagya, dispassion, becomes a monk. Does that mean the mind has been purified? Not necessarily. So the purification of the mind is still something to be accomplished. Does that mean the mind is already very concentrated? Not necessarily. Concentration of mind still has to be accomplished. But as a Vedantic monk, what you're supposed to practice is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, which is Jnana Yoga only. Now, will that Jnana Yoga, the Jnana Yoga is, what is the Jnana Yoga meant to do? As we saw here in the quotation, Jnana Yogena Avidya Nivritti. Will the Jnana Yoga also remove our impurities? Will it give me concentration of mind? It can. They say that the continuous repetition of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, the earlier things also will be accomplished, but it's not a practical way of doing it. It can be compared to, see, you have two instruments, a shovel and a scalpel, a surgical instrument. The surgical instrument can do a very subtle work, which the shovel cannot do. But the shovel also can do work which you will damage the scalpel if you try to do the work of a shovel there. A shovel is, you can move a lot of dirt and grit with the shovel. If you try to do that with the scalpel, you can do it, but it is difficult, and you will, in the process, you may damage the scalpel also. So a course of Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga. Upasana Yoga has elements of Raja Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, both are there, and Jnana Yoga. This is the whole practice of Vedanta. Now, next, Sri Ramakrishna comes to the heart of Vedanta. After preparing the ground, I just read it, because he has said so many things we will see next time. Sri Ramakrishna's conversation now turned to the knowledge of Brahman. Master, Brahman is beyond Vidya and Avidya, knowledge and ignorance. It is beyond Maya, the illusion of duality. The world consists of the illusory duality of knowledge and ignorance. It contains knowledge and devotion, and also attachment to lust and gold, righteousness and unrighteousness, good and evil. But Brahman is unattached to these. Good and evil apply to the jiva, the individual soul, as do righteousness and unrighteousness. But Brahman is not at all affected by them. One man may read the Bhagavata by the light of a lamp, and another may commit a forgery by the very light. But the lamp is unaffected. The sun sheds its light on the wicked as well as on the virtuous. You may ask, how then can one explain misery and sin and unhappiness? The answer is that these apply only to the jiva. Brahman is unaffected by them. There is poison in a snake, but though others may die if bitten by it, the snake itself is not affected by the poison. What Brahman is cannot be described. All things in the world, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Tantras, the 6 systems of philosophy, have been defiled like food that has been touched by the tongue, for they have been read or uttered by the tongue. Only one thing has not been defiled in this way, and that is Brahman. No one has been able to say what Brahman is. Vidyasagar to his friends, oh, that is a remarkable statement. I have learned something new today. We'll see all this next time. Prabir Babu, did you want to ask something?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you. I just, Sunday's talk, Tattvamasi. So that word is that saying is in the Upanishads. My question, I have two questions. One is, how do the dualists interpret that? Because if you say you are God, that's blasphemy for them, isn't it? So I've been thinking about how do because they cannot say Upanishads are not correct, so they have to somehow interpret that.
It's quite easy. Quite easy, because Sanskrit grammar comes to their aid. Tat Tvamasi can be, if you can split it in this way: Tasya Tvamasi. You belong to that. You are an amsha of that reality. Or Tad Adhina Tvamasi. That also is a possible interpretation. You are under the control. You are under the domain of that reality. That reality is like God, and you are the subject. That reality is like a king, and you are the subject. God is like the king, the ruler, and you are dependent on that. So God is Swatantra, you are Paratantra. Tattvamasi can be interpreted.
So they use Jahat Lakshana or something?
Yes. Do you remember in the Vedanta Sara discussion, in one place, Visheshya Visheshana Bhava, we had to be careful about how it was applied. Otherwise, it would lead straight to Vishishtadvaitavada. So there are these interpretations. And so remember, Mahavakya, when we say, it is we who are saying it, Advaitins who are saying it. We give specific importance to non-dualistic texts, and we make all the other texts supporting, Avantara Vakya, or secondary texts, and they all lead up to Tattvamasi or Aham Brahmasmi. But that is just the interpretive mechanism which Shankaracharya and his followers have used to set up the system of Advaita Vedanta. The same game has been played by Ramanuja and his disciples, Madhvacharya and his disciples. So to set up a consistent philosophy, you have to see how the pieces fit into each other. You can't discard any of them because they are all from the same Upanishads. You discard one thing, then others can also be discarded. You have to find a logical place for all these statements. So if you make up your mind that non-dualism is the teaching of the Upanishads, then the non-dualistic texts, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, that's the final highest teaching, and that's the purport of all other statements. So it has to be interpreted in that way. But if you make up your mind that dualism, God and the divine and the human are separate, then you put the dualistic statement. There are plenty of dualistic statements. Dva suparna sayuja sakaya samanam rikshe parishaswajate mundakopanishad. Two birds of equal feathers, they stay on the same tree. And Shankaracharya interprets it that the higher bird is pure consciousness, lower bird is the jiva. But the dualist will immediately see the first word, Dva Suvarna, two birds, not one reality. So in this way, the great verse in the 15th chapter, Purushottama Yoga. So there, Dvavimo Purusho Loke, Ksharascha Kshara Evacha. There are two kinds of Purushas in this world. One is the perishable and one is the imperishable. Higher than these two, there's a third one called Purushottamas. So then, how will you play with these words? You can easily see. You can give dualistic interpretation, qualified monistic interpretation, non-dualistic interpretation also.
The other question was, if somebody just knows Tattvamasi and without going through Sravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana, just meditates on that, can he reach enlightenment?
It will become like a japa.
Okay.
It's a Vedic statement. With japa, it has its own benefit, but it will not by itself, without the grace, maybe of the grace of the Guru or Ishvara, it will not by itself lead to Brahma Jnana. It has to be supported by everything else. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. It's only when you understand what Tattvamasi means, what Tat means, Tvam means, the precise details in the debates which are involved in the Mahavakya Vichara, they are secondary. That you need not bother about. You can read it once or hear it once, what goes on behind it. But the essence of it must be understood. I think this Sunday's talk, I made I gave an important quotation from Vidyaranya, not the Sanskrit original, but the essence of it. 2 errors are removed by Mahavakya. 2 errors. One error is, I, the ever-present consciousness, I'm a limited consciousness. I'm only this body, this mind. I'm bored and I die. I'm happy, I'm unhappy. Notice, all these are limitations of body and mind, not limitations of consciousness, but I impose it upon myself. That's one big error. The second big error is God is something different from me. It seems to be obvious to me. There is God, but something different from me. Out there, somewhere, not me. It is a great error. So these two errors, the parichinnatvam of the Sakshi and the parokshatvam of Brahman, Saguna Brahman, the parokshatvam of Brahman and the parichinnatvam of the Sakshi, the limitation of the witness consciousness and the remote, so-called remoteness of God, these two errors are corrected at one stroke, in one swoop by the Mahavakya. It tells you, you, the ever-present consciousness, is none other than God. So God is ever present as you, the consciousness. But that consciousness is infinite. It's not limited in this body and mind. It is to that consciousness that all of space and time and all objects appear and disappear. It's a fact. How can they limit you? So this understanding must be there. Once you have this understanding, then if you repeat aham, not tattvamasi, aham brahmasmi, with that understanding, you know what you are repeating. You are just again and again directing your attention to the ultimate truth within you, your true, ultimately true nature. Then it becomes nididhyasana. Without understanding, if somebody keeps on saying that thou art, it becomes a japa. Nothing wrong in it, but with only limited results.
Thank you, Maharaj.
All right, we had a nice discussion. Let me conclude here. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. A couple of other questions had come. Abhijit said, do other schools consider other sentences from Upanishads to Mahavakyas for their schools? I don't think so, as far as they know. They give stress, the dualistic schools will give stress on the dualistic statements, but I don't think they use the term Mahavakya. And the beauty here is, so traditionally you'll be asked to, you choose. You make up your mind. Traditional teachers have said, even now they say, you make up your mind. So these are different interpretations. Make up your mind. Advaitic interpretation alone is the correct one. With respect, we disagree with every other interpretation. But this beauty of Sri Ramakrishna's teaching is, see, they will all work. Ultimately, the Saguna Brahman of Vishishta Advaita and the Saguna Brahman of Advaita Vedanta, even the Nirguna Brahman, it's the same reality. You are getting a better and better appreciation of it. You are getting that also. When I'm saying better and better appreciation, I'm speaking from our perspective as non-dualists. A dualist will never agree that you're getting better and better appreciation. But yes, the simple thing you take from Sri Ramakrishna, it is the same reality. It's the same elephant that the 5 blind men are touching and giving different reports about it. So if that you accept, it's fine. You can enjoy Vishishtadvaitic interpretation. You can enjoy Kashmiri Shaiva. I've given you that link. So you will see he gives quite a different spin to Advaita Vedanta coming from a Kashmiri Shaiva perspective. He starts, what I'm going to say today, I'm talking about Professor Chakravarti. You will see he starts, I'm going to say today, Brahma Satyam, Jagat Satyam, Jiva Brahmaiva Napara. So that is completely unacceptable to a non-dualist. If you ask me, what do you think about it? I understand the spirit in which he is saying it. So do you accept it? Not at all. It is logically impossible to establish a system which says Brahma Satyam, Jagat Satyam, Jiva Brahmaiva Napara. In spirit, you're right. Brahman is the reality. And the world is no other reality than Brahman. And of course, the Jiva is the reality. So you've already dismissed the world that we see and accept as false. You have dismissed that. And that is what Vedanta wants to say when it says Jagat Mithya. The way we in ignorance see the world, this is not the truth. So that has to be an important step. I mean, there's a lot to be said about this. One sadhu in Uttarakhand put it very beautifully. Iti iti neti neti. Not this, not this. And iti iti this, this. He says iti iti is a higher teaching. But when this is a crucial warning, you have to go through neti neti to understand iti iti. You have to go through not this to understand this teaching. And then the sadhu said, जो गुरु अपने शिष्य को पहले से ही इति इति सिखाता है, वो गुरु शिष्य की तो हत्या कर देता है. The guru, the master who teaches iti iti at the beginning, this is the world, this is Brahman. And the master who teaches that at the beginning murders the student. Murders the student means blocks all possibility of enlightenment.